Hello, if you've been watching my HTML tutorials um, or not, here's a standalone explanation of the difference between HTML5 versus HTML4. Uh, just a quick little explainer because you'll encounter HTML5 and you want to know what it is. You'll want to know whether HTML4 is obsolete. It's not really. Um, Especially for learning purposes, HTML4 is much easier to learn. Um, and There's a lot of legacy written in HTML4, and that's why I taught that stuff. Um, but you'll learn about it, and you'll have to learn HTML5 as well. It's not really much different. Basically, HTML5 integrates the logic of your document more closely into the structure of the document, and it also severs off style, keeps styles more separate out of the main part of your HTML code. There's lots of good reasons for that. Now, we've used HTML4 tags to create the physical structure of a document. HTML4 tags are pretty basic, you know. Title is in the title tag, and paragraph is in the paragraph tag. Headings are in one of the heading tags, etc. Um, Kind of similar to what you do when you mark up a paper document. Um, we all know what a paragraph is for and what a title is for, but HTML5 is slightly different. It assumes that the computer, because the computer can't tell the difference between one or another, it doesn't really know the different logical, you know, different logical meanings of each of the different types of document headings. So if you use HTML5 tags, um, the computer can tell a lot more what the intention of each section of text is relative to each other. Okay, um, the header will, the computer will be programmed. Browser, the internet browser, as well as the web crawler that optimizes the search engines, will know that a header is something which is a introductory top part of the page. Section will lay out a section of the document. An article will be a standalone piece of rich text. An aside will be an aside point. A footer will be a footnote, and each one of those has a little more significance when you organize your document. That helps the web browser, the web crawler, the search engine computer more closely understand how your document is organized. Why is this important? Because it's important because the web crawler and the search engines can have more of a sense of how your document is organized. Um, and other parts of the web browser, same thing, um, and also the programmer, style-wise, um, if they know what the logical structure of the document is by reading the different tag sets, um, they'll be able to more carefully organize the presentation. Um, with HTML5, you use tags that reflect the logical structure of your text. That means, you know, header, section, article, etc. It just gives everyone um, more insight into how your document is going to be structured. When you're dealing with the automation of thousands and millions of pages, um, you know, web browsers can more closely classify your document. For example, um, say your document is a dictionary. It's going to have thousands and thousands of little article level sections. And so the computer looks at all those, the fact that there's so many little article sections, and will classify the document differently than, an essay, which will have a lot of headings, but not nearly as many article sections. Not really particularly significant when you're writing a small number of pages for yourself, but if you're processing very large amounts of text for work, it's an important shortcut. The other important thing is style. Style can be more closely linked to the semantic points of your document. So instead of saying, okay, H1 will have purple text, H3 will have blue text, H5 will have red text, and paragraph will have courier text. Instead you say headings have this color, section headings have this color, and the article text has this color, this font, whatever. That will make your document more readable. It'll make your document more stylistically uniform across pages, because article is going to be the same. It's going to have the same relevance across all your pages, whereas you could have H3 and one set of pages that just use HTML, and have the same HTML4, and have different article, have a different header just by mistake on another page, and heading H2 simply doesn't have enough information, as opposed to header as a tag set. So what's the semantic web? HTML5 builds a semantic web basically because, as we said, since the tag sets reflect the logical structure of the document, if all documents are built with HTML5, they can be compared to each other more quickly, abstracted, indexed, and organized more quickly, and basically the entire web can become one big document, because there's a lot more information about how the document is organized by reading the tag sets. This will allow the search engines to weight your document differently. Like I said, a document with a whole hundreds and hundreds of index or hundreds and hundreds of article tags, that's going to be a different kind of document than a document with a lot of heading tags. And all the items that are organized by one way can be more readily categorized against each other. It basically makes the web crawler more intelligent. And the idea is to organize the web into one giant document. So this is what HTML5 looks like. Looks just like HTML, except you have these different type of tag sets. And I've nested them for convenience. Misspelled article here. But you see, article is inside section, is inside header, and footer follows. And so you know that, probably the principal information of the page is going to be inside the article tag. You have no way of knowing that with HTML4 because it would just be a P, tag. Paragraph doesn't tell you anything about the organization, the rank of the role of the article, the role of that paragraph in the broader scope of things. This is what it looks like in HTML code. The one big thing to note is with HTML5 you have a doc type header declaration up top. In the angle brackets it's just exclamation point doc type HTML inside angle brackets, and that will set off, that will tell the computer, the computer will be able to tell it's an HTML5 document. And then it kind of looks like a regular HTML document, except we've replaced paragraph and header with section and article, or paragraph and the heading, the H1 to H5s, with section, article, and header. And footer is a new thing entirely. The style you can see from biggest emphasis to smallest emphasis, header, section, article, footer. They're not in order in this style. Paragraph up top. The most significant stuff, the header is in the biggest font. Footer, the aside, the footer, the footnote. That's kind of secondary stuff that some people will want to read. That's in the smallest font. So what's really important here, or it doesn't seem important, but what's important is the relative ranking of each, the relative semantic ranking of each tag set reflects directly in the style, in the same page, in the same line. I keep harping on this. You're trying to integrate the semantics of the document in the structure of the document. And this is what it looks like. As you see, I've made heading the biggest and the footnote the smallest. Section is mid-size, paragraph is second smallest. But you notice we're specifying, the paragraph's role in the document is what determines the size of the text. I've added some margin here just to show you margins. I'm not certain we've done much margin in my tutorials. Margin is specified by margin left, margin right, and I've expressed it in percentages. We're going to indent, the more specific points are the most indented. Indenting to 50% is kind of ridiculous. It just centers it directly after the 50% line. It just wants you to see what a margin 50% looks like. Different margin lengths for the different margin widths for the different semantic levels. Don't want to say one thing's more important than another. They're just at different levels. A header is the most general. Paragraph and footer are the most specific. But the other important thing about HTML is style is intended to be separated as much as possible from content. In this previous page, I had style at the top. Ultimately, the idea is to eventually move all style to a separate style sheet. It'll be a text sheet that will sit in the same folder with the HTML pages, or it could sit elsewhere, but the pages will all have link tag sets which will reference the style page. The style is off board. It's not on the page. That way, the style on one page can control the style on one .css style page can affect the style of every page on the internet that references it. There are some standard style sheets, but that means you only have to write the style rule once. You can change the style for all your pages by modifying one place on the CSS page. Centralizes it all, makes it much easier to edit and update. All the style only written once and lives in one place. But also importantly, if the style is not integrated and woven into the page, the web crawlers that the search engines use do not have to chunk through a bunch of style text. That's kind of makes it more efficient for the web crawlers, so they like HTML5 pages and probably prioritize them over HTML4 pages for that reason. And you can, it's easier, it requires more planning to have a centralized separate style page, but in the long run it's a lot easier. Going to require a lot more organization, because you have to plan in advance what you want the style to look like, but it allows you to make more consistent pages. Whole families of pages can access a style sheet and they'll all look the same with only one set of styling. But it does require a lot more organization. HTML4 doesn't disappear. The browsers are backward compatible, so you can use HTML4 inside HTML5. HTML5 does not replace all HTML4 tag sets, but the idea is to eventually get rid of HTML4 and make all HTML semantic. So style sheets, like I said, they're a separate page. They're a text page with all the style rules written on it as a .css on it, .css file extension, not a .html. That makes it you haven't used them at all in my tutorials, at least. You will, but style has a hierarchy, just like HTML elements have a hierarchy. You have the paragraph and H1 tags in HTML4 nested inside the body tag. You have the title tag and style tag, and eventually the script tag nested inside the head tag. And you can have italics or bold nested inside a paragraph tag. CSS also is hierarchical. You can write a rule that all paragraph tags that follow an H1 tag have a certain font. Make another rule, all paragraph tags following an H3 tag set can have a different style. Or you could also have all article tags in HTML5 that follow a section tag will have a certain font. And if an article tag doesn't follow a section tag, but rather just follows a header tag, that will have a different kind of font. Basically, you can make stuff that's nested inherit the rules imposed upon the elements above it. And since HTML5 is semantic, that means you could have different levels of text inheriting different style characteristics based on their logical structure. That's a little abstract. You'll see it more as you construct documents, but what it means is nesting will allow different hierarchies of information which are visible in the style. Say, for example, pages that describe a process will have a certain font. Pages that describe a dogma will have a different font. And those could inherit from the headings, which will have a different font. A manual, a technical manual will have a very spare font, and everything that the headings have a spare font, and every paragraph under the headings will inherit that kind of spare style, whereas something that's a little more creative will have a different font. And so CSS, nice thing also about CSS is you can change the style rules in response to scripting. You haven't gotten to scripting yet at all, but CSS can, to an extent, you can program it dynamically to change color or change the size of something. I used it to write graphs and pie charts, because you can vary the width of various elements. And CSS can, you haven't done any scripting, but CSS will allow you to vary the font in response to input from the user. So HTML is pretty simple. All you're doing basically is changing some of the tags to, at this point, changing the tags to heading, section, article, aside, and footer. Just change them from H1 and paragraph and H3 or whatever. And also the other ideas, separate out your style as much as possible. HTML5 can be seamlessly integrated in, if you find it useful. At the moment, we're still kind of sticking with HTML4, but HTML5 is undoubtedly the key to the future.